Shaq was a shitty free throw shooter. He missed dunks. He airball free throws. He can't shoot. He couldn't shoot outside the paint. He's bigger than everybody. He ain't had any skills, but he was bigger and stronger than everybody. And he's still a great player, but you had your flaws too as a player. And he played on 5 or 6 teams too, so it's not like he's just his perfect, center.
With just a handful of words, Shaquille O'Neal systematically dismantled Kevin Durant's entire argument for being mentioned among the greatest of all time, and he made it look easy. For years, Durant has fought to position himself on the same pedestal as Michael Jordan and LeBron James, citing his 2 rings, 2 finals, MVPs, and his status as one of the most gifted scorers the sport has ever seen. But from the comfort of his podcast, Shaq took a sledgehammer to that entire narrative. He zeroed in on the one vulnerability Durant never once addressed. His role on the Golden State Warriors was not that of a leader. He was a passenger on a championship machine, not its driver. And for Durant, the timing of this public condemnation couldn't have been more brutal. The comments surfaced as he was reeling from consecutive playoff sweeps, all while trying to validate his Warriors championships as equal to any other. But Shaq was throwing verbal haymakers now with no intention of pulling his punches, insisting Durant belongs in a special category just like himself. He admitted he isn't in the GOAT conversation, but is instead one of the 2 most dominant players in history. Durant, he argued, is one of the 2 most prolific and dominant scorers ever. When Shaq speaks, the basketball world listens, and his verdict landed with the impact of one of his thunderous dunks. Shaq's point was crystal clear. Durant is not a candidate for the greatest of all time. He exists in a completely different echelon. It's a tier reserved for the hyper-talented athletes who, despite their immense gifts, never quite ascended to that ultimate sacred peak. And hearing that from a 4-time champion who has been to the summit is a devastating assessment. But what makes this rivalry even more intense is its history. The animosity between Shaq and Durant isn't new. This isn't some fresh debate. This conflict has been simmering since 2017. It ignited when Shaq was having fun on his legendary Shaqtin' a Fool segment, mercilessly mocking JaVale McGee for his on-court blunders as he so often does. The segment is universally understood as entertainment, but Durant didn't see it that way. Durant, who was McGee's teammate with the Warriors at the time, decided to intervene, calling Shaq's commentary childish. He didn't end it there, though. In a later interview, Durant made the conflict intensely personal, attacking Shaq's own game. He pointed out that Shaq himself was a terrible free throw shooter, a guy who airballed shots, flubbed dunks, and had no range beyond the key. He claimed Shaq's dominance was a product of his size, not his talent. Those words were the spark that lit the fuse between them. Now, all these years later, the feud has come full circle. On a recent installment of the big podcast, Shaq, alongside Lou Williams and Bill Bellamy, faced the GOAT question once more. Host Adam Lefkoe raised the ultimate debate. Does Kevin Durant have a place in the conversation for the greatest basketball player of all time? To his credit, Lou Williams mounted a defense for Durant. He had faced him in battle and witnessed that greatness firsthand, particularly during that unforgettable 2019 playoff series where Durant absolutely torched the Clippers. Williams called him a transcendent talent, something the world had never seen. He argued that there has never been another player quite like KD. Williams continued describing Durant as a 7-footer who moves like a point guard and shoots with more purity than almost anyone in the annals of the game. And he isn't wrong. From a pure talent perspective, Durant is an absolute phenom. But even Williams had to concede a critical point. The timing of his move to Golden State was a catastrophe for his image, especially happening right after his team lost to them. He suggested that if Durant had made that move in any other year of his career, it wouldn't be viewed with such scorn. It remains an incredibly sensitive subject among fans and analysts in the basketball community. But the timing of Durant's biggest career decision was undeniably terrible. He didn't just join a winning team, he joined the very team that had defeated him after staging an epic comeback from a 3-1 series deficit. That decision has forever stained his legacy. And that is precisely the point Shaq continues to hammer home. Because, from his perspective, Durant had all the talent in the cosmos, but chose the easiest road to a title. And when a competitor like Shaq, who fought and clawed his way to 4 championships, delivers that verdict, it resonates deeply. The Diesel isn't just analyzing basketball. He's talking about a warrior's pride, about the drive to prove oneself when the challenge is at its greatest. He was a notoriously bad free throw shooter. He fumbled dunks. He threw up air balls from the line. He was a non-shooter, completely ineffective outside of the immediate basket area. He was just bigger than everyone. He possessed no real skills, the criticism went, but he was a giant who was stronger than everyone. And while he's still a legendary player, he was deeply flawed. He played on 5 or 16-inch teeth, so it's not as if he was some flawless, perfect center. Just consider that for a moment. Kevin Durant, a player who had yet to win a single championship as the undisputed leader of his team, was publicly criticizing the game of a 4-time NBA champion. Durant was putting Shaq's imperfections under a microscope before ever proving he could carry a team to the summit himself. That isn't just confidence, it's a profound level of audacity. And Shaq, well, he was not about to let that slide. Not in the slightest. In a conversation with Sports Illustrated, the big man delivered what may be one of the most frigid, disrespectful lines of their entire ongoing war of words. Shaq essentially said, "You are not in my club." He said, "He can't talk to me like that. He may think he can and that he's defending his teammate." Sure, he was a phenomenal talent, but he wasn't yet part of the fraternity. He stood on the outside looking in with icons like Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and John Stockton. "You aren't in that circle with me and the other champions." That's the reason I tweeted at him, "Stay in your own lane." He then lumped Kevin Durant into the same group as the greatest players to never secure a title, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, and John Stockton. These were absolute Titans Hall of Famers, yet they remained without a championship. Shaq's message was brutally clear. Despite all your skills and scoring accolades, KD, you still aren't in the club. But there's a crucial detail most people overlook. This wasn't just Shaq talking smack. He was imparting a lesson, highlighting the chasm between his own generation and the one Durant emerged from. Consider this years ago when the legendary Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, one of the best to ever play the game, informed a young Shaq that he hadn't made it into the club. Shaq didn't lash out on Twitter or complain. He never claimed claimed Kareem played in a softer era. Instead, he took the criticism to heart and put in the work. Kareem made his point publicly, telling the entire world that Shaq's stats were meaningless without a ring to back them up. So, how did Shaq respond? He became laser-focused, dominated the entire league, and returned with 4 championships to his name. No tweets, no arguments, no posts. He made his performance on the court his only statement. Now jump forward to Durant's generation and witness the stark contrast in how things unfolded. When legends like Shaq and Barkley asserted that his championships didn't carry the same weight, KD failed to elevate his game in response. He took to Twitter using burner accounts to fire back at anonymous fans and bicker with teenagers in the comment sections. He told the old guard to move on. That single contrast is precisely what Shaq was pointing out. And frankly, he had a point. To grasp the true origins of this friction, you have to go back to May of 2016. This was the precise moment that altered the trajectory of Kevin Durant's career. The Oklahoma City Thunder held a 3-1 series lead over the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. Kevin Durant was dropping 30 points a night. Russell Westbrook was playing out of his mind, and they had just dismantled a 67-win Spurs team in the prior round. They were a single victory away from the NBA Finals. But when the heat was on, it all fell apart. Game 5 was in Oklahoma City. Durant scored 40 points on 29 attempts, but it wasn't enough. The Thunder lost by 9. For Game 6 in Oakland, KD put up 29, but shot a dismal 10 for 31 from the floor. The Warriors clawed that one back, pushing the series to a Game 7. In that ultimate do-or-die game with the whole world tuned in, Durant managed 27 points on 10 for 19 shooting. The numbers looked decent on the stat sheet, but they weren't clutch when it counted the most. Over those final 3 devastating losses, Durant and Westbrook gave up a combined 30 turnovers. 30. They had the reigning champions backed into a corner leading 3-1, and they still couldn't deliver the final blow. The Warriors didn't just win, they executed one of the most stunning comebacks in the history of the NBA playoffs. They advanced directly to the finals. And although they fell to LeBron James and the Cavaliers in 7 games, the real damage had already been done. Because 2 months later, instead of plotting his revenge, Kevin Durant made the single most polarizing decision in the history of the modern NBA. He went to the very team that had just defeated him, the same squad he and Westbrook couldn't overcome. Rather than proving he could beat them, he chose to join them. That singular choice permanently altered his public perception. It wouldn't matter how many titles he won from that point on, the story was already written. And that is precisely why Shaq's criticism cuts so deeply. Because somewhere inside Kevin Durant understands that the Diesel isn't just making noise. He is speaking a hard truth. Shaq has always been candid about why his issue with Kevin Durant is so personal. On his podcast, The Big Podcast, he explained it in the simplest terms. He constructed his championship rosters in a completely different manner. You were always surrounded by superstars wherever you were. But I operated within the established rules of the system. When I initially arrived in Orlando, we didn't have a lot. I saw we could acquire him. The following year, I heard Horace Grant was not re-signing with Chicago. So I grabbed him. You understand what I'm saying? Then after I departed, I went to Los Angeles. I saw that Kobe was on the rise, but he wasn't quite at that elite level yet. So get me Brian Shaw. Get me Robert Horry. Get me Rick Fox. This was all conducted within the accepted rules. Yeah, this was all handled according to the league's system. It's not like we competed against a team, lost to them, and then I called them up saying, "Hey, want to team up next year?" Never. You see, that is the fundamental difference. Shaquille O'Neal built empires. Kevin Durant joined one that was already built. Shaq went to Orlando and was central to building that organization from the ground up. He then moved to LA, joined forces with Kobe Bryant, and was instrumental in restoring the Lakers to glory. At every stop, he was the foundational piece the superstar others were eager to play alongside. Shaq never had to chase championships. He was the reason they happened. Durant, on the other hand, attached himself to a team that had already demonstrated it could win a title without him. He jumped onto a championship parade float that was already in motion and just found an empty seat. And believe me, the animosity between these two has been simmering for a very long time. But a single exchange serves as the definitive boiling point. In January of 2023, Kevin Durant, feeling overly confident on social media, decided he would challenge the Diesel. After Shaq confessed on air that he was unfamiliar with a Lakers trade prospect, Durant launched the tweet that ignited a firestorm. Shaquille doesn't know ball now. That one sentence was all it took to provoke Shaq into full-blown attack mode. He didn't just reply, he absolutely demolished Durant online. The big Aristotle mocked his hairline and then delivered a finishing blow that was utterly devastating. Respect the bus driver. 4 simple words that landed with more force than one of his dunks. Shaq was putting him in his place, reminding him who's in charge of the championship journey and who is merely a passenger. Durant's response was feeble. He posted, "Damn, I got cooked for asking a simple question." That reply revealed everything. Durant crumbled the moment a true legend confronted him. He can act tough online all he wants, but when actual basketball royalty calls him out, he backs down. The statistics paint a brutal, undeniable picture. During his time with the Golden State Warriors, Kevin Durant's playoff performance was legendary, 38 victories to only 10 defeats. That's a dominant 79% win rate, 2 championships, and 2 finals MVP awards. Pure annihilation. But remove him from that super team and the narrative collapses. His record elsewhere is a pedestrian 57 wins against 50 losses, barely floating above 500 with 0 rings and a painful finals defeat in Oklahoma City. His journey has been marred by early exits in Brooklyn, including humiliating sweeps by Boston with the Nets and later by Minnesota while he was in Phoenix. The takeaway is crystal clear. When Durant was supported by the immense talent of Steph Clay and Draymond, he seemed unstoppable. Without them, he has been just another superstar piling up impressive stats with no championship hardware to validate them. That is not the resume of a team's undisputed leader. That is the definition of a supporting role. Now contrast that career with the legacy of Shaquille O'Neal. Shaq claimed 4 championships and each victory told a unique story. He led his team to a finals appearance alongside Penny Hardaway in Orlando. He built a dynasty with Kobe in Los Angeles, capturing 3 consecutive titles and 3 finals MVPs. He then secured a 4th ring in Miami next to a young Dwayne Wade. Wherever he played, Shaq was the alpha. He was the engine, the tone setter, who propelled his teams to the absolute summit. As for Durant, every attempt he's made to lead a team by himself has ended in disaster. He has crashed and burned in the first or second round of the playoffs far too many times. That is why this whole controversy is about more than just counting rings. It is about respect. This entire conflict between Shaq and KD reveals a much deeper issue. It strikes at the heart of what defines greatness in the modern NBA. The old guard guys like Shaq and Barkley were raised with the belief that you defeat your rivals, you don't team up with them. When Michael Jordan repeatedly failed to get past the notorious bad boy Pistons, he didn't try to recruit them. He hit the gym, came back as a force of nature, and ended their reign. When Shaq couldn't overcome the Bulls, he didn't try to join forces with Michael. He relocated to LA and established his own basketball empire. Durant, on the other hand, has attempted to spin a different tale. He explained to Bill Simmons that the game has evolved, insisting that players today possess greater freedom to forge their own paths. And while the game has certainly changed, the unwavering standards for true greatness have not. Jordan, Kobe, and LeBron all played in different periods, all endured different kinds of pressure, but every one of them proved they could be the singular force that carries a team all the way to a championship. They didn't just join a championship contender, they built one. Yet KD continues to tell the old legends to let it go. But here is the cold, hard truth. They are the guardians of legacy. They are the ones who vote for the Hall of Fame, who shape the GOAT debates, and who write the definitive history of basketball. And at this moment, their consensus is clear. Kevin Durant does not yet belong in that highest echelon of players. So where does this leave him? At 36 years old, the clock is ticking loudly. His talent was never the issue, but the questions about his leadership, his legacy, and his public perception are what remain unanswered. And until he can prove that he can pilot a team to the top by himself, those legends will continue to see him as a passenger. Now on his fourth team, Kevin Durant's championship window is slamming shut. Shaq was brutally honest. He stated directly that Durant belongs in his own separate and special class. He is unquestionably one of the most gifted scorers the sport has ever produced, but he is not included in the GOAT conversation. That is the one distinction KD never wanted attached to his name. You see, Durant doesn't just want to be recognized as a premier scorer. He wants his name mentioned in the same hallowed conversations as Jordan and LeBron. He wants people to view his rings as having the same value, to see him as the man who reached the summit on his own terms. But let's be honest, since he left Golden State, that deep respect has never materialized. 2 first-round sweeps and a string of underachieving teams tell the story. And every single time the stakes are highest, his teams seem to collapse instead of conquer. No one is denying KD's incredible skill, his perfect shot, his efficiency, or his scoring ability. It is all top tier. But being part of the GOAT discussion is not merely about talent. It is about legacy. It is about leadership. It is about being the one who steers the franchise, not the passenger who is just along for the ride. Until Durant can prove he can carry a team from start to finish, to endure the hardships, lead through adversity, and still hoist that championship trophy, the legends like Shaq, Jordan, and Kobe will not grant him entry into their exclusive circle. Lead through adversity and still bring home that title. The legends like Shaq, Jordan, and Kobe won't let him in that top-tier circle. Shaq put it perfectly. KD lacks that G14 classification, that certified stamp of leadership that only the true titans of the game ever earn. So now the final question remains, was Shaq right all along? Is Durant forever barred from the GOAT conversation because of how he secured those championships? Or can he still reshape the narrative before time expires? Tell me what you think. Drop your thoughts down in the comments. Be sure to hit that like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in the next video.